He stood there on my porch, screaming that I was too old to understand as deputies handed him the eviction notice. I didn't shout back. I just watched him realize the game was over. My name was still on that deed, and always would be. The story had only begun. I carried a grocery bag on my arm, humming an old church tune that still clung to my mind from service that morning. The September air in Savannah was thick, warm, and smelled like rain that never quite arrived. My knees ached from the steps, so I laughed to myself. Lord, these bones been loyal, but they sure don't like Sunday nights. It was supposed to be a quiet evening. I had plans to make tea, call my friend Odessa and fold laundry. Simple things. Familiar things. When I reached the porch, something didn't sit right. The porch light glared too bright, cold and white instead of the soft amber I'd always used. Alden liked those LED bulbs, said they were efficient. I called them unfriendly. My hand touched the doorknob, and I froze. The key wouldn't turn. I twisted harder, then wiped it on my dress like that'd make any difference. Still nothing. At first, I told myself it was a fluke. Maybe the deadbolt slipped. Maybe my fingers were stiff. You learn to question yourself before the world does it for you. But then, that quiet certainty came. My own key didn't fit because someone made it so. Someone changed the locks on my house. The house my husband and I worked 40 years to pay off. I knocked. Soft, polite, the way women of my age were taught. The door cracked open. Alden filled the frame like he belonged there. "You weren't supposed to come back tonight," he said, voice smooth as glass. No greeting, no Mama Dory, just business. His body blocked the entry like a wall. "Alden," I said, steady. "Move. I'm going inside my home." He didn't budge. "It's not just your home anymore. It's ours now. You're making this harder than it needs to be." Ah, that line, harder than it needs to be, is the language of men who steal with manners. Behind him, I saw my living room half rearranged. Boxes, her pink throw blanket, the Live, Laugh, Love sign my daughter bought, hanging where my husband's photograph used to rest. "Who authorized you to change my locks?" I asked. He smiled the way people do when they think they're smarter than you. "We've talked to an attorney. You signed the transfer papers. You agreed you couldn't stay here alone anymore. It's for your safety." Safety. That word stung worse than any insult. He waved a folder like a badge. "We notarized it. Power of attorney. You signed." I stepped closer. "Let me see it." He pressed it to his chest. "You don't need to see all that in. We'll handle it." "We'll handle it?" That phrase meant, we took what's yours and dare you to fight for it. Mariella appeared behind him, her voice soft and sharp at once. "Mama, please don't make a scene. My head can't take this tonight." She looked comfortable, at home. Her purse sat in my husband's recliner, the same spot where his Bible used to rest open. "You said your knees hurt," she added. "You said maybe assisted living." I said my knees hurt when it rains. I cut in. That's all I said. But I realized something heavier. They'd rehearsed this. They'd practiced their story about the confused old woman who signed something. My daughter's silence told me the betrayal wasn't sudden. It was planned. I steadied myself. "Listen here," I said, quiet enough to make them lean closer. "This house is Marchand property. I'm Marchand. I am not confused. I am not homeless. And I am not scared of either of you." Alden smirked. "You don't want to go down this road. Dory, we already moved your things to the garage." My throat went dry. That one word, moved, rang louder than any curse. They'd already started erasing me. I reached into my purse, pulled out my phone. and tapped the red button. The record light blinked between us. "Say that again, baby," I said, calm as prayer. Nice and clear. His face shifted the way guilt flickers before pride covers it up. Mariella looked down, biting her lip. I kept the camera steady, heart pounding, voice low. "You think I'm too old to notice theft dressed up as kindness?" I said. "Go on, tell me again how this house is yours." The camera caught the tremor in his jaw. For the first time that night, Alden didn't have a word to say. The red record light glowed in my hand, small but steady. I held it up toward Alden's face. "Say that again, sweetheart. My memory might be fading, but this little phone remembers everything." My voice came out sugar sweet, the kind of tone Southern women use when they're warning you without raising a hand. Alden's jaw tightened. "Dorothy, stop this. We're taking responsibility. You're not safe staying here alone. You can't manage the upkeep. We had to take control." Every word he used was polished, legal, rehearsed, like he'd practiced in front of a mirror. I stepped across the threshold, just 1 foot, and he shifted, blocking me with his arm. It wasn't a conversation anymore. It was a performance. And he was the star. Mariella stood behind him, arms folded, her eyes tired. "Mama, please," she said quietly. "The neighbors can hear you." The sound of sprinklers and porch lights clicking on filled the block. Pauletta Dane across the street had her watering can out, pretending to fuss with her plants. I saw her glance up, hungry for a story to tell. I smiled into my phone camera. "Your neighbors, baby? I pay the taxes on the ground they're standing on." My voice didn't shake. He leaned close, whispering fast so it wouldn't catch on camera. "Keep this up, and you're not getting a dime from the refinance." Refinance. That word sliced through my calm. My mind didn't freeze. It filed the word away. Paper trail. Bank records. Dates. All of it. You don't survive to 69 without learning how to make memory into evidence. Then Alden raised his voice, loud and theatrical. "You can't just walk in here anymore. We live here now. We're building our life here." The way he said "we" stung, like a verdict being read out loud. Pauletta's head turned, and 2 other porch lights flickered on. Mariella tried to play the gentle daughter act. "Mama, we've talked about this. You can stay when we're home, but you can't just drop by unannounced." She was rewriting my life like it was a policy memo. I said quietly, "When your own child starts saying we've informed you, baby, that ain't family talk. That's legal talk." Alden took the grocery bag from my arm, setting it on the porch rail like charity. "We'll get you settled, but you can't just show up." He wanted the world to see him as kind, the good son-in-law protecting the poor old woman. I saw the way phones glowed across the street. Someone was filming. I knew before midnight my name would be floating through neighborhood gossip as the confused widow on Habersham Street. But I didn't cry. If I cried, they'd win the story. So I lifted my chin, turned toward the street, and walked down 1 step, steady, deliberate, like I chose to. Through the doorway, I caught a glimpse of my dining room, my table, my family's history carved in oak. On it sat store cupcakes and a banner, "Happy New Season, Mariella." My seat at the head of the table, gone. The head chair had vanished like I never existed. "Mama, you're making this awkward," Mariella said, arms crossed tighter. "You took my chair out that dining room?" I asked. Alden's voice came smooth. "We're updating the space, making it feel like ours." Something in me settled cold. They weren't redecorating, they were erasing. My picture, my place, my authority. I stopped recording. Slid the phone into my purse. Sympathy couldn't fix this. Evidence could. Alden said, "Roy already picked up some of your boxes, so you're fine." That name hit me like ice water. Roy Keener, my neighbor, my friend. "You talked to Roy?" I asked. Mariella nodded. "He's just helping. Mama." The study was dusty. Dusty, I repeated. That was my husband's study. His books, his Bible. Dusty to her, sacred to me. I didn't curse, didn't shout. I just said, "Close my door." Then I turned and walked away. Each step down that porch felt like reclaiming something invisible. My spine, my silence, my plan. Pauletta saw me leave, but she didn't see defeat. She saw a woman thinking. I carried the groceries 2 blocks to Roy's trailer. The air was heavy, full of crickets and heat. Roy opened the door before I knocked twice. He took one look at my face and said, "You want water or quiet first?" "Quiet," I said. Then I told him, "They changed my locks." Roy's face didn't even flinch. He walked to a drawer, pulled out a manila envelope, and placed it on the table. "I was hoping I was wrong," he muttered. Inside the envelope were printouts, emails, draft listings, a purchase agreement, my address at the top, my husband's name crossed out, words like motivated asset and fast close. Roy said softly, "They've been shopping your house for weeks. Dory." Tonight wasn't the start. It was the finish line. I felt something shift inside me. The part of me that mourned turned into something colder, smarter. I looked him in the eye. "Then tomorrow," I said. "I'll let him talk. On tape." The trailer was quiet except for the coffee pot burbling on the counter. Roy sat across from me, arms folded, his eyes steady. I laid my phone on the table between us, voice low but certain. "It ain't revenge. Roy, it's documentation." He nodded once. No argument needed. The TV was on mute. Weather Channel looping warnings about storms rolling through Macon. Ordinary noise for an extraordinary night. I opened my contacts, scrolled down to Alden's name, and took a slow breath. "When men like him think they're smarter than you," I said softly, "they get sloppy." I rehearsed the line again in my head. Sweet, harmless, old lady soft. "Baby, can you explain again how you're handling my mortgage?" I didn't want fury to bleed through my voice. I wanted control. Roy leaned back, watching me with the same look my husband once had before I faced down a boss at the county clinic. Half worry, half pride. I hit call. The phone rang twice before Alden answered. "Why are you calling me this late?" His voice came sharp, irritated, like I'd woken a king. I smiled at nothing. "Baby, I just needed to know where my pension checks are going now. You moved them, right?" He hesitated, then said, "They go where they've always gone. Our joint account at Savannah First." That word, our, sat heavy in the air. "I've been managing it since you signed the authorization," he continued. "You don't have to worry about numbers." I let silence do the work. The quiet made him fill it with guilt. Finally, I said, "I ain't worried about numbers, sweetheart. I'm worried about integrity." He snapped. "Don't start something you can't finish." Perfect. The words came out hard, clear, caught by the recorder. I thanked him sweetly and hung up. Roy leaned over to check the phone. "It's saved," he said. The red dot blinked confirmation like a heartbeat. By morning, we were sitting in the lobby of Savannah First Bank. The air smelled like copy paper and overbrewed coffee. Retirees stood in line holding deposit slips. The teller screens hummed with that faint mechanical glow. When I asked for my account statement, the young teller. Carla blinked fast and said, "Ma'am, your primary contact is Mr. Alden Crestwell. I smiled, polite. Oh? Does it say joint account? Yes, ma'am. Opened August 14th, with your digital signature. I felt my chest tighten. I don't sign digitally. Sugar. I still write checks. She hesitated, lowering her voice. Everything goes to him now. All email notices, all transfers. Roy muttered beside me. He used DocuSign through that refinance broker. That was when it stopped being family business. This was fraud, neat and federal. I didn't shout. I just said, "Could you print me those records for my file, please?" She nodded and handed me 3 pages, each showing withdrawals labeled maintenance expenses, each for $900. My savings bleeding slow, neat, like a patient nobody's treating. I folded the papers carefully, slid them into my purse. "Thank you, darling," I said. Roy watched me, whispering. "Now he's gonna realize you called him last night." "That's fine," I said, calm as a church prayer. "Let him come storming. The camera's charged." That night, the storm outside finally broke. Thunder rolled low, steady. My phone buzzed, a private number. I pressed record before answering. "You went to the bank?" Alden's voice was no longer polite. It was stripped raw. "You think you can turn people against me?" "I ain't turning anybody. Baby," I said softly. "Just flipping light switches in dark rooms." He growled. "If you keep this up, you won't have a penny left to your name." I smiled into the dark. "Then I reckon I better make sure every penny knows who earned it." The call ended. I pressed save file. The title glowed on the screen, 1:43 a.m., proof. I woke before sunrise in Roy's trailer, the hum of the refrigerator low and steady, the kind of quiet that feels like a held breath. I fried 2 eggs, buttered toast, and brewed coffee that tasted half like courage, half like nerves. I combed my hair smooth, pressed my blazer flat, and pinned on the same gold brooch I wore to my husband's funeral. When I looked in the mirror, I didn't see fear. I saw readiness. In Savannah, if you look frazzled, they call you confused. If you look polished, they call you ma'am. I was going to be ma'am. Before I left, I slid my wedding band back on. I hadn't worn it daily since Charles passed, but that ring said something. Paper couldn't. It said, I built a home. I wasn't a guest in my own life. Every printout, every bank statement went into a grocery store folder, thin and unassuming. Snakes don't see you coming when you look like Sunday. Roy sat at the table, coffee steaming between us. "You're smiling, Dory," he said. I smiled wider. I told him. "That ain't happiness. That's strategy." Outside, the Savannah air was bright but heavy, sky pale with the promise of heat. I drove the old Buick toward Victory Drive, radio off, windows cracked, heart beating slow and sure. Alden wanted to play businessman? Then we'd meet on his turf. The office looked cheap, faded blinds, fake ficus tree, a sign that said Crestwell Mortgage Solutions like it meant something. I walked in with my head high. The front desk girl looked nervous. "Can I help you?" she asked. "Yes, baby," I said, kind but firm. "Tell Alden his mother-in-law's here about the account he's been managing." Alden appeared from the back, face draining of color like I'd turned the sun on him. "You can't just drop by here," he hissed. "Sweetheart," I said, still smiling, "you already dropped by my retirement." He tried ushering me into a small office, blinds drawn tight. "You can't record anything here," he warned. "Oh, but I can," I said calmly. "Georgia's one-party consent, and I'm the party talking." His face twitched. That was when I knew he'd been briefed. He knew exactly what law I meant. I sat, set my phone on his desk, scrolled, and pressed play. His own voice filled the room, his arrogance, his threats. That slick tone from the 143, call. You can't just walk in here anymore. If you keep this up, you won't have a penny left to your name. He lunged for the phone. I moved it aside, slow, deliberate. Sit down, I said, voice low. You forgot who taught you manners. He froze, jaw clenched, fingers trembling. You're gonna destroy this family over paperwork? No, I said evenly. You destroyed this family with paperwork. I'm just labeling the pieces for the judge. His silence said more than any defense could. I saw it then. The shift. He wasn't confident anymore. He was cornered. He tried again. Quieter. You were supposed to be grateful. You're almost 70. You don't need that big a place. We're the future. That word, future, burned through me like lightning. I let him finish. Every word, another rope around his neck. Then, calm as prayer, I asked, did Mariella see the listing where you called my house a motivated asset? His eyes flickered. He didn't answer. That silence told me everything. She didn't know all of it. Not yet. I stood, smoothed my blazer, gathered my folder and phone. The next time you hear this recording, it'll be in a room with a judge, he said. You wouldn't. I gave him that same quiet smile Roy saw that morning, the one that looks peaceful but means the storm's already started. He still thought this was family? I said softly as I walked out. I knew better. This was evidence. The courthouse doors ahead gleamed in the afternoon sun. My hands didn't shake. Ma'am, I told the clerk when she looked up, I need to report financial exploitation of an elder, and I brought receipts. The courthouse smelled like paper and old air conditioning, that sterile kind of chill you only find in government buildings. The tile under my shoes was beige and clean, echoing every step. People stood in line holding folders, grocery bags full of documents, envelopes tied with rubber bands. Bureaucracy doesn't look like drama. It looks like patience. Roy walked beside me, not talking, just carrying the envelope. His role wasn't to speak, it was to witness. When the deputy asked our purpose, I looked him straight in the eye. I'm here to report financial exploitation of an elder and fraudulent property transfer on my home. Saying it out loud made it real, made it official. They handed me a number. We waited under fluorescent light. My heart steady. I thought about how many women like me never walk through these doors, how fear keeps them quiet. Baby, I whispered for the camera later. You walk into any government building like you pay taxes, because you do. When my name was called, I stood, smoothed my blazer, and followed the clerk into the hearing room. I wasn't improvising. Every move I made was already mapped in my head. Alden showed up 10 minutes late with his lawyer, Sandra Marin. She looked polished, hair sharp, voice sweet as syrup but cold underneath. Alden wouldn't look at me. He just kept his eyes on the floor. That told the judge more than he knew. Sandra began soft, almost pitying. Your Honor, Ms. Marchand has been struggling to live safely alone. My client, Mr. Crestwell, has stepped in to help manage her financial affairs. I said, quiet but firm. No, ma'am. Judge Barrow lifted her gaze, mid-60s, silver hair, eyes like they'd seen every kind of lie. Ms. Marchand, you'll have your turn. Her tone was calm, not dismissive. She knew the type of fight this was. Sandra smiled like she was handling a child. To avoid confusion, my client consolidated her accounts. Permission to respond, Your Honor? I waited for the nod. Then I slid my folder across the table. No shaking hands. My tabs were color-coded, sticky notes from the dollar store, but they looked official. "Here's what I'm submitting," I said, voice steady. Emails between Alden and a broker calling my house a motivated asset, screenshots of my account, withdrawals labeled maintenance expenses, a draft listing that called my home vacant soon, elderly seller, a transcript header of Alden saying, "You're not getting a dime," and my property tax receipt in my name this year. I met Sandra's eyes. I didn't authorize a joint account. I didn't consent to a sale. I didn't agree to be declared incompetent. I'm standing right here, clear-headed, and I'm telling this court my son-in-law is liquidating my home while I'm alive and lucid. Sandra tried to cut in. "Ms. Marchand is misunderstanding." I leaned slightly forward, not loud, just certain. "Ma'am, I worked 32 years and buried my husband in that house. Don't tell me I'm misunderstanding my own life." The room went quiet. That silence had weight. Even Judge Barrow didn't rush it. She just turned her gaze to Alden. "Mr. Cresswell," she said evenly, "did you open or authorize any financial account in Ms. Marchand's name without her direct participation?" Alden's throat worked, but words didn't. Sandra tried to save him. "Your Honor, this was a loving—" "I didn't ask you counsel," the judge said sharply. "I asked him." Alden muttered. "We had her consent verbally." That was his mistake. Judge Barrow's pen tapped twice. "Effective immediately. A temporary restraining order is placed on the property at 1224 Habersham. No transfer, refinance, or asset removal until review. Do you understand, Mr. Crestwell?" He nodded, but his neck flushed red. His lawyer whispered something quick, urgent. The mask cracked. For the first time, he looked scared. Outside in the hallway, Sandra hissed, "I told you not to say anything on the phone." Alden turned on me. "You think this is over? You think you won?" I leaned close, voice soft enough only for him. "Baby, I ain't even started." My phone buzzed. Talia's name lit the screen. "Grandma," she said, her voice tight, "you need to see something on Roy's doorbell camera. He said it's urgent." My stomach sank, but my face stayed calm. The battle in court was just the first front. The real storm was already knocking. I didn't drive home after court. I drove straight to Roy's trailer. TRO papers still warm in my purse. My hands didn't shake. My mind was clean as glass. Roy had his TV paused on the doorbell app. "Dory," he said, "I ain't touched a thing. You should see it fresh." The glow from the screen lit his lined face like a lantern. That mattered. Chain of custody. He'd learned that phrase from me this week. We sat at his wobbly kitchen table, that same one we'd eaten beans on 10 times over. Roy hit play. The video showed Alden pacing on the porch the night before court, phone pressed to his ear, voice sharp and careless. "She's old, she'll fold. I'll tell the judge she's slipping. Trask said we can get $580 if we get her out by the end of the month." He said it like I was a problem to move, not a person to respect. I watched his mouth move, my own reflection small in the corner of the screen. Roy looked at me and whispered, "That's it, Dory. That's your proof. See, baby," I said to the camera later, "you don't always gotta argue. Sometimes you just let folks talk with the mic." Hot. I called Talia next. My granddaughter picked up on the first ring, her voice breathless from her shift. "Grandma, now what happened in court?" "I'll tell you when you get here," I said. "Bring that little tripod you use for your TikToks." She showed up 20 minutes later, still in scrubs, hair pulled back tight. Her face said everything: anger, love, readiness. "He really said you're slipping." "He said it in high definition," I answered. I told her straight. "I'm going to let Alden talk himself into jail. You'll stand right here as my witness. You'll testify if it comes to that. You got it?" "Yes, ma'am," she said. No hesitation. That was the moment I knew the future was mine again. Roy pulled out his old Android. "We'll record on this too," he said. He can't say we edited anything. We were building evidence like people who'd been burned and learned. Then I called Alden, speaker on calm as rain. "Alden, baby," I began. "I just left court. Judge froze the house. That made you mad, didn't it?" He erupted. "You senile old woman. You went to a judge on me after everything I've done for you?" I said softly. "You did a lot for me." "Huh? Go on, say that part again." He bit the bait. "I handled the refinance, the insurance, the bank, because you can't keep track of your money anymore. You said you were tired," I asked. "So you're saying I told you to sell my house while I wasn't there?" "Don't play dumb," he snapped. "We already moved your junk out," Roy mouthed. Got him. Talia's eyes went wide. I stayed quiet. Every word from him was another nail in his own coffin. 10 minutes later, we heard his truck outside. He stomped up the steps, red-faced, sweating, shouting through the screen. "Open up, Dory! You think you can embarrass me in front of a judge?" I opened the screen door, left the lock on, stood where Talia's camera could see. "Alden," I said evenly, "you forged my name and tried to sell my paid-off house. That's theft, and now it's on record." He lost control. "You weren't supposed to fight me. You were supposed to sign and shut up." The silence after that was heavy as thunder. He'd said the truth out loud, on camera, in front of witnesses. I smiled just enough. "Thank you, Alden. That's all I needed." I turned, walked back inside. No yelling, no drama, just evidence. He started shouting threats through the door. "I'll take that house anyway. I'll have you committed." Talia stepped forward, voice clear. "You try to touch her. I'll post this video in every church and lawyer's office in Chatham County." Alden froze. He finally realized the game flipped. I looked at the lens and said, "That's the sound of a man watching his lies get recorded." That night, Roy texted me. News travels fast. His name's already mud. I knew the storm had shifted. Tomorrow. I'd put my hand back on my own front door. The morning air on Habersham Street was damp and quiet, the kind that sticks to your neck before the sun even rises. Spanish moss hung low like a veil over the block. A garbage truck clattered 2 streets away. I walked with the TRO papers in my purse, the weight of them steady against my hip. No hiding, no creeping, just walking home. "You walk like you're allowed," I told myself, because you are. Roy and Talia had both offered to come with me, but I said no. This wasn't about backup. This was about ownership. If I showed up with company, Alden would call it drama. Alone. I was just a woman stepping onto her porch. I knocked once. Firm. No yelling. No pleading. Just sound enough to carry. Inside. I heard whispers and a quick shuffle of feet. The smell of coffee drifted out, the brand I always bought, the one they used to tease me for being old-fashioned. That scent burned more than I wanted to admit. You ever stand outside something you built and feel like a guest at your own door? That's the kind of ache no pill fixes. I pulled out my phone, hit record, and slipped it into my jacket pocket. From now on, everything was on file. The door opened slow. Mariella stood there, hair messy, Alden's t-shirt hanging on her. "Mama, you can't just—" I raised one hand, palm out. "Baby, this here is a lawful visit. Judge Barrow signed an order yesterday saying nothing leaves this house. Not furniture, not money, not one spoon. Which means your mama has every right to walk in her own kitchen and sit in her own chair. You understand?" She froze. For the first time in months, she didn't argue. That pause was all I needed. Alden came down the hall, half dressed and half mad. "This is harassment," he barked, voice already too loud for the street. "Good morning, Alden," I said gently. "You do realize yelling at me on my porch while half the block is awake ain't the look you think it is?" He waved papers in my face. "You sign this." "If that were true," I said, "your lawyer would have handed it to the judge yesterday." But she didn't. "So either you're lying now, or you let your lawyer lie in court. Which one's it gonna be?" He froze. Silence on the street thickened. Pauletta from across the way peeked out from her screen door. This wasn't private anymore, and I wanted it that way. I stepped past them into the dining room. "Listen, baby," I said quietly for the camera. "When they erase you, you start by putting your name back on something solid." My chair, the one from Chapter 2, was stacked against the wall under boxes labeled "Donate." I lifted it, slow and sure, and dragged it back to the head of the table. The scrape of wood on tile sounded like thunder. I sat, hands folded, spine straight, wedding band glinting in morning light. "This is my home," I said, voice steady. "I am not confused. I am not slipping. I am not unsafe. I am seated, present, and in charge." Alden hissed, "Call Sandra." He wouldn't look at me. Men who depend on control can't stand when quiet ruins them, Mariella whispered. "Alden, stop. Just that, soft, shaky, but real. That's the first time she wasn't his echo." He turned to the porch, still trying to reclaim the stage. "She's unstable. I'm trying to protect her," Pauletta called out. "Alden, baby, we all heard that video. You told her to sign and shut up. Don't stand out here lying." His face fell. Word had already spread. I didn't even have to shout. Savannah was doing my work for me. I followed him onto the porch. My voice stayed calm. "Alden Crestwell, I am telling you plain. You will not touch my accounts, my furniture, or my reputation. You will not move, sign, or whisper one thing about this property until the court says otherwise. You understand?" He tried to shout over me, but my words landed clean on the recording. He sounded wild. I sounded lawful. That difference would matter later. He pointed his finger at me, voice cracking. "I'll have you placed. I swear, I'll have you placed." I smiled just slightly. "Sweetheart, the only person getting placed around here is you, in front of a judge." Mariella gasped. "Felony?" she whispered, realization cutting through her denial. I turned to her, gentle but firm. "Baby, if you move one more box, sign one more paper, or tell one more lie about me being confused, you become part of the crime. Do you understand your mama?" Tears slipped down her cheeks. "Mama, I didn't know." Alden grabbed her arm. "Don't listen to her." She pulled away, trembling but defiant. That was it, the first time she chose truth over comfort. I walked back inside, pulled my chair up to the table, and said, "Now, somebody make some coffee. We're going to call Detective Pruitt and make this official." Morning sunlight slipped through the blinds and stretched across my dining table, the same table where I'd once been told to move out, the same table where I now sat in my rightful chair. My TRO papers were spread beside the bank statements, and the flash drive with Roy's video sat labeled neat in Talia's handwriting, "Alden Elder Financial." I wasn't shaking, wasn't bragging. I was working. Quiet power is the kind that lasts. I called Detective Pruitt. His voice came steady, practiced, like he'd heard my story 100 times before. "You said you had proof, Ms. Marchand?" "I got more than proof. Detective," I said. "I got confession. You'll hear him say, word for word, that I'm slipping, and he planned to sell my house." He sighed softly. "Happens more than folks think. These men wrap it up as caregiving and control the money. Well, not this one, I said. And not this house. He promised to send a deputy and start a formal report. I told him clearly, "You write this down the way I say it. I'm not confused. I am not unsafe. I am not surrendering my house." I wanted that sentence in black ink, in his file, under my name. For every woman my age listening, you make them write the truth before somebody else rewrites it for you. By noon, a county sedan pulled up. No sirens, no noise, just authority. Detective Pruitt and a uniformed deputy stepped out. Alden was in my foyer pretending to be calm, arms crossed like a salesman caught mid-lie. "This is my residence," he said. The deputy barely looked up. "You're not on the deed." Alden pointed toward Mariella. "My wife lives here. She can stay." The deputy answered flat, "You cannot. You're ordered to vacate for 72 hours pending investigation into elder exploitation. No contact, no removal of property." Alden laughed, thin and brittle. "This is insane." Pruitt pressed play on his phone, the audio of Alden shouting, "You were supposed to sign and shut up." The sound of his own voice filled the room like thunder. His face drained, his body deflated right in front of us. That's when he finally realized this wasn't a family spat. It was evidence. I didn't gloat. I just sat still in my chair, hands folded like I was back in church. Revenge looks better when you don't have to raise your voice. He turned to Mariella, desperate. "You coming with me or what?" She said nothing. Her silence was the knife he never saw coming. When the door closed behind him, the whole house seemed to breathe again. Mariella stood near the counter, eyes red, voice small. "Mama, I didn't know how bad." I stopped her with a raised hand. "Don't apologize to me for him. I love you, baby. But you hear me now? You lie for that man again. You sign one more thing with my name. I'll put you on the same report. I mean that." She nodded, tears sliding down her face. I didn't hug her. Healing don't come in one afternoon. By sunset, the street glowed pink under the moss trees. I stepped onto my porch with a mug of coffee and looked out at my neighbors. They were already watching, pretending they weren't. I smiled and said loud enough for the block, "If anybody's confused, this is still my house. My name's still on my deed. My chair's still at my table." Laughter and amen rolled back from the porches. That sound wasn't gossip. It was respect coming home. Talia's car pulled up. "Grandma, you ready for the new locks?" "Yes, baby," I said. "Bring Grandma her keys." As the drill buzzed and the last screw tightened, I felt the air shift, this house breathing my name again. I touched the door frame, whispered, "We're safe now." Then I turned to the camera, my voice steady. People think getting old means giving up your name, your house, your story. Not me. My name is Dory Marchand. I worked for this house. I buried my husband here. You don't erase me while I'm still standing in it. And if anybody ever tells you to sign and shut up, baby, you hit record. The night settled soft over Habersham Street. But my phone buzzed, an unknown number, the same area code as Alden's lawyer. I stared at the screen, coffee still warm in my hand. Was this peace or the next storm? Stay tuned. Baby, some stories don't end when the door locks.